Hello, in the Business of Data team here at Crinium, and it is a pleasure to have you joining us today. Driven by our global connected network, Crinium inspires data and analytics senior leaders to drive efficiency and innovation and follow proven paths to success. The Business of Data show is just one of the formats where we showcase thought-leading insights from senior data analytics executives. In each episode, we'll discuss the latest industry news and research and explore the hottest topics, challenges and opportunities from around the world. On that note, we'd love to hear from you. If you have thoughts, questions or topics that you'd like us to cover in future episodes, please do email them over to bod@criniumgroup.com. Edge computing is an exciting innovation at the intersection of cloud computing and AI. It involves installing AI chips directly onto IoT devices, allowing them to perform complex computations without having to send data to the cloud. Our research confirms substantial interest in the technology from the business community. 1 in 4 of our survey respondents expect it to be deployed in their organizations by 2023. Earlier this week, I was lucky enough to catch up with another thought leader to talk about this fantastic topic. Welcome, Jill.
Thanks so much, Catherine. Very happy to be here.
Absolutely brilliant to have you as well, Jill. Well, let's talk all about the very exciting topic of edge computing. Now, obviously, modern smartphones use a lot of edge computing in a number of ways, but I'm really keen to know if you could start out by outlining the most interesting applications of this technology for telecoms and other industries that you know of.
I think from our perspective, just in terms of the real use of it, and I think specifically moving into the space of IoT is the more that we actually deploy 5G, the more what we want to be able to do is really bring analytics and the power of using data far closer to the source, far closer to how we're actually sourcing information, and really kind of marry the processes and people with really those kind of touch points. I think primarily for us as a telecommunications company, internally, the opportunities for us is really getting incredibly close to how we properly manage our network. So really being able to actually diagnose faults, identify them incredibly early on in journeys, be able to then deploy, obviously, engineering teams to be able to address them and fix them. And that obviously for us really drives our customer experience and improves our customer experience and make sure that we do provide the service levels that we really do want to as a telco. And I think, across multiple industries, if you look at manufacturing, there's incredibly similar user stories or use cases whereby edge computing can allow you to really get far closer to, take mining, for example, real-time streaming of information to be able to automate machinery or tooling and, really kind of mine minerals and resources in a way where it reduces the risk on people. And you can really start actually managing health and safety in a completely different way. So I think the application thereof is endless. I think for us, very much there's big application around the management of our network.
And as I just kicked off our conversation there with the very exciting topic of edge computing, and what a great way you framed this discussion, Jill, because as you say, for many businesses, having that fantastic customer experience is going to be fundamental going towards the future. But as you say there with the manufacturing, if it's going to save people's lives, it's going to keep people safe, it's absolutely worth doing. So how far would you agree that edge computing is the last piece of the puzzle that will allow enterprises to maximize the value they generate with their cloud migrations?
It's a tough one to call because I think every year somebody's inventing a new mousetrap. To be fair, I think the technology is advancing so quickly, specifically in our space. And I think once we get the computing power to really harness it, you might see that as edge computing generation 2. And, if things are going to manifest themselves, I think at a get. So I think from our perspective, the constraints we've got is truly really having an environment and architecture that can support edge computing. And I think for companies, there's an investment to be able to get there. But clearly, once you have got there the constant scaling up, upgrading, adopting the new ways of working, or the next generation of edge computing, I think is going to be the way that companies are going to then operate.
And it's really interesting, actually, that you mentioned about the right data architecture, because that was literally the next question I wanted to ask you. Because for me, I speak to so many brilliant people like yourself on a daily basis, and I'd love to get a feel from you as to whether it is typical that enterprises currently have the right data architecture in place to deploy edge capabilities successfully, not just deploy them, but actually get that success, get that user case and value out of them. And are there other foundational investments that AI-focused leaders should make first before investing in edge?
I think it's a bit of both, to be fair. So it's going to be for the medium to larger organizations that have been around a very long time. They've built up a lot of legacy environments, multiple systems that talk to each other on premise, and then obviously a lot of companies are deploying cloud, but it's about how you actually parallel run and get off the on-premise environments. And there's a lot of touch points between systems, from where you source your information to actually where you drive advanced analytics from. And I think on that basis, it makes it incredibly challenging for companies to adopt edge computing. So companies are doing this in a couple of ways. So clearly implementing, cloud and having the environments as close to your front-end journeys as possible that can facilitate real-time streaming of data, and obviously the capacity and the processing power to be able to support that is critical. There's no big bang approach for a lot of the organizations we see there. So there's a lot of application in taking use cases, smaller use cases. So for example, if you want to be able to, let's say, automate processes in your call center, taking a use case and then marry that with your customer experience, and let's say from our perspective, obviously, then correlate with your network experience. Something like that it could be a relatively ring-fenced piece of work whereby you can actually turn the dial on the architecture, but then also introduce clearly the new capability at the same time.
So when we talk a lot in the data analytics world, often we'll talk about key buzzwords, right? We'll say certain buzzwords that executives will have been saying, why aren't we doing this, or are we doing this, and they'll want to be talking about it. Edge computing, do you think it's something that is on the front of mind for executives, or is it that little bit further out there? That's the feel that I get, but I'd love to know your thought.
I think everybody wants to absolutely adopt it and move to it. I think a lot of the innovative, smaller and more nimble companies are already actually implementing and using it as a viable outcome or capability. But I think where there is for a lot of organizations that are much bigger, a lot of the focus tends to be more on getting the foundations right. So moving to the cloud, getting your primary core systems onto the cloud, getting your data platforms in place, getting the actually advanced analytic capabilities that can support your data science, etc., in place, and edge computing is kind of the next step. On a lot of the roadmaps. So I think it's a bit of both. Depending on the type of organization you have, but it's definitely one where, as a chief data officer or a director of data analytics or head of digital, it would be part of the roadmap. It would be part of what you're actually pushing forward. And then obviously that comes in alongside DevOps, and kind of the future way of delivering data analytics and supporting a business.
Now, it's really interesting to me that you say it's the next step. Now, when I've spoken to other executives about, say, cloud transformation, going from on-prem to the cloud, there is that level of it's the next step that cloud transformation is, but it's almost done whilst you're sorting out everything else, right? The business isn't just going to stop and say, okay, guys, you can sort out edge computing. We'll go off for a week. It's going to be during this time. So, do you think there is a level that, although, yes, data quality needs to improve, yes, you want to work on your governance and your systems and cloud and everything, but do you think at some point people just need to jump ship and move into edge computing rather than wait for that perfect opportunity that probably most likely won't exist?
Yeah, I mean, look, every company is somewhat different, you know what I mean? But I think... I think, to be fair, I'm not sure if that's strictly true for most of the organizations, especially the ones that I've worked for or I've been involved with, on the basis that, as you've rightly said, a company is running today. They need data analytics today. They need to function today. They have customer growth targets, retention targets. They've got revenue numbers, and they've got a company that they need to support. So I think on that basis, there is never going to be just a big bang if you've got a certain architecture that supports the run of a company today. Unless you set up a separate entity and you migrate over, for example, but you're still going to have a dual run. You'll still have coexistence for a period of time, because you've got to make sure that you can still support, let's say, regulatory requirements in the way that you've been doing, or that you can support your customers in the way you've been doing, and you're not going to actually provide them with less of a service, or you're not going to actually compromise your risk position as an organization as you move across. So it's kind of a fine, especially if you've racked up quite a bit of technical debt or legacy architecture. And I think, so to be honest with you, I'd love to say the big bang approach is the right approach, and for some organizations it really is, but I think for the most part it's one that has to be adopted carefully, or treaded carefully.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jill. So the last question I wanted to ask you today, and I don't expect you to get out a crystal ball to answer this, but we're kind of talking about this wider adoption and when that's going to happen. So if you had to give kind of a timeline, next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, when would you think that you'd be seeing this wider adoption of edge computing for businesses around the world?
Yeah, I'd say the next 3 to 5 years. Depend, and it's also going to be, I think, what you're going to find is specific industries are going to adopt it far more readily than others. So that I think is probably what's going to happen a lot more, a lot quicker.
Brilliant. Jill, it's always a pleasure chatting to you. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Catherine, thanks very much. Really appreciate it.
There we go. What an excellent episode. Thank you again to our thought leaders for their wonderful contributions. That brings us to the end of season 1 of the Business of Data show. To catch up on all 5 episodes, please do head over to the Business of Data platform to watch them on demand. We will be back on your screens with season 2 real soon. Be sure to subscribe to the Business of Data YouTube channel, follow our page on LinkedIn, and visit our content platform for more great content, insights, and connections. Until next time, stay safe, stay well, and we'll see you soon.